My dad pointed at me in front of the entire staff and said, "We don't need monkeys like you, only real businessmen." So I quit on the spot and came back years later to buy the company after my brother drove it into bankruptcy. I-34, male run, a high-end auto-customization and restoration shop. 5 years ago, though, I was just the eldest son who couldn't do anything right. My old man Rick, 62, male, started Carter Auto when I was just a kid. It was supposed to be a family legacy. At least that's what he'd ramble about at every damn barbecue. I believed him too. So much that I spent 4 years at Michigan State getting my mechanical engineering degree, then another 2 years getting specialized certifications in automotive electronics and classic car restoration, all while working weekends at the family shop for basically gas money. Growing up, I breathed cars. My walls were plastered with the Lamborghini Ferrari and the '67 Shelby GT500. By 14, I could diagnose most engine problems by sound alone. That changed when my brother entered the picture. My younger brother, Evan, 30, male, never had to jump through those hoops. I got a business management degree from some online college that advertises during daytime TV, and Dad immediately made him shop manager when he graduated. No questions asked, no proving himself needed. Evan couldn't tell a carburetor from a catalytic converter, but he had people skills and business vision, according to Dad. Translation: he could base customers and had grand ideas that always required more money than they generated. Our Uncle Jack was the only one who saw through the bull. He ran his own small garage across town. Nothing fancy, just honest work. He'd seen the whole dynamic play out from the outside and tried to warn me. "Ronnie, they're never going to see what you bring to the table. Not until you're gone and they need it." I didn't listen. Thought I could change things from the inside. That was my first mistake. Jack had his own garage and a reputation that brought in vintage Ferraris from 3 states away. No ads, just word of mouth. Meanwhile, at Carter Auto, Dad had big dreams, but increasingly outdated methods. The shop had good bones, 6 bays, decent equipment, prime location on the corner of Main and Highland, but he refused to invest in modern diagnostic equipment or update our billing systems. "We've always done it this way" was practically the shop motto. We were leaving money on the table every day because we couldn't handle certain repairs that required specialized tools or software. I tried to push for upgrades, even offered to pay for some of them myself, but Dad always shot me down. Meanwhile, Evan would suggest repainting the waiting room in brighter colors, and Dad would sign off on it immediately. The writing was on the wall. I just refused to read it. It all blew up at one morning's staff meeting. Dad was reviewing the quarterly finances with everyone, including our head mechanic Tony, office manager Sarah, and my Uncle Jack, who occasionally consulted for us on classic restorations. The numbers weren't great. Revenue was down 12% compared to the same quarter last year. Customer retention had slipped to 68%, well below the industry standard of 80%. Cash reserves were dwindling because we'd invested in a bunch of cosmetic upgrades to the customer lounge that Evan had insisted would elevate the brand experience. But instead of addressing these issues, Evan had just pitched his brilliant expansion plan, opening a second location in the ritzy part of town. His entire plan was a joke. The lease costs were astronomical. The projected customer base was overestimated, and the equipment budget was about 40% of what it needed to be. I sat there taking notes. When Evan finished with his PowerPoint with animations that looked like they were made by a 5th grader, Dad asked if anyone had questions. "Yeah, I have a few," I said, flipping through my notepad. "The lease you're looking at is $12,500 a month, but you've budgeted $8,000. The equipment list is missing an alignment rack, which is minimum $30,000, and the market research doesn't account for the 3 other high-end shops within a 5-meter radius." The room went quiet. Evan rolled his eyes. Always the pessimist. Dad shot me that look I'd grown familiar with, the one that said, "Why can't you just play along?" But Uncle Jack nodded slightly, giving me the confidence to continue. "I'm not being a pessimist. I'm being realistic. This plan would burn through our cash reserves in 6 months tops. And that's assuming we even get the customers you're projecting, which we won't." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Your brother put a lot of work into this work." I laughed. "He copy-pasted this from the franchise proposal template on the SBA website. Look, it still has the sample text in the footer." Evan's face went red. "At least I'm trying to grow this business instead of just fixing the same old cars every day." Dad stood up, pointing at me. "Your brother's thinking big. That's what this business needs. Visionaries, not mechanics. The world's full of guys who can change oil and rotate tires." That hit hard. 8 years of education, countless certifications, and the custom 1967 Mustang restoration that got us featured in Auto Enthusiast magazine last year, all reduced to changing oil and rotating tires. That Mustang resurrection had been my showcase project. 6 months of nights and weekends bringing it back from the dead paid off when we unveiled it at the regional car show. That single project brought in 3 high-end clients and about $300,000 in revenue. And now Dad was acting like I was just some grunt turning wrenches. I built our reputation on quality work, I said, keeping my voice level despite the heat rising in my neck. The classic car division you pushed me to start brings in 40% of our revenue now, and we're grateful for that, Dad said in that patronizing tone. But we need leadership now, not just technical skills. Uncle Jack spoke up. Rick, you're making a mistake here. Ronnie knows what he is. Dad cut him off. I didn't ask for your input, Jack. This is a family decision. I am family, Jack shot back. You know what I mean, Dad muttered. Then he looked straight at me with those cold eyes. We need businessmen, not grease monkeys. You don't belong in the decision-making part of this company. The room went dead silent. I stood up slowly, gathering my notes. Where are you going? Dad asked, surprised that I wasn't just taking it like usual. If I'm just a grease monkey, then I quit. Effective immediately. I walked out, ignoring Mom's gasp and Evan's smug little smirk. Uncle Jack followed me to the parking lot. You're doing the right thing, he said quietly. Should have happened years ago. What the hell am I supposed to do now? I asked him, reality settling in. I had about $42,000 saved up, but no real plan. Come work with me, he said. Not forever, just until you figure out your next move. I nodded, too angry to say much else. That night, I packed up my apartment and crashed on Uncle Jack's couch. I was 29 years old, starting over from scratch. Part of me had always known that Carter Auto wasn't my future. I just hadn't had the guts to make the break myself. Dad's dismissal hurt like hell, but it was also liberating. No more meetings where my input was ignored. No more watching Evan get all the credit. No more compromising on quality to meet Dad's outdated standards. Tomorrow I'd start figuring out what Ronnie Carter could do when he wasn't living in Rick Carter's shadow. Working with Uncle Jack gave me space to see the full picture of how messed up things had been for years. The pattern was so obvious in hindsight. The car situation summed it all up. Evan got a brand new Jeep at 16, while I got $2,000 toward a used car I had to make payments on. When he crashed it, Dad covered repairs. When mine needed work, I was told to figure it out because that's how you learn responsibility. The real kicker came during my senior year of college. I'd been accepted into a prestigious automotive engineering internship with a major manufacturer. It was a huge opportunity, paid prestigious, and could have led to connections that would have changed my career trajectory. But Dad called me saying they needed me at the shop because they were short-staffed. So I turned it down to help the family. Found out later they weren't short-staffed at all. Dad just didn't want to pay to hire another mechanic for the summer. The favoritism was never subtle, but I always made excuses for it. Evan needs more support. Dad just connects with him better. At least I'm learning the technical side of the business. All bull, I told myself. The final straw came when I overheard Dad talking to Mum one night about 6 months before I quit. They didn't know I was in the hallway. When I retire, Evan will take over as CEO. Ronnie can keep running the service department if he wants, but all major decisions will go through Evan, Dad said matter-of-factly. Mom's response was weak as always. Don't you think that might upset Ronnie? Here's the older one, and he's put in so much time. Ronnie's a great mechanic, but he doesn't have what it takes to lead. Besides, I already promised Evan. It's decided. 20 years of busting my ass, getting degrees, building our reputation, bringing in high-end clients, and I was going to be reporting to my younger brother, who couldn't even balance the shop's checkbook without help. That was when I should have left. But I held on another 6 months, hoping something would change. It didn't. Working at Uncle Jack's shop was great. His place was smaller than Carter Auto, just 3 bays and a tiny office, but it ran like clockwork. Honest work and fair pay. Jack had 2 solid techs who took me in without question. For the first month, I just focused on the work, diagnosing problems, turning wrenches, dealing with customers face to face. If I said a car needed a new timing belt, no one questioned my assessment or tried to upsell the customer on services they didn't need. It was refreshing, but I knew it wasn't a long-term solution. Jack's shop was successful, but small by design. He'd never wanted to expand or take on more than he could personally oversee. I respected that, but I had bigger ambitions. At night after the shop closed, I'd stay late sketching out ideas for my own place. What would it look like? What kind of services would we offer? How would we differentiate from the dozens of other repair shops in the area? I kept coming back to restoration and customization. That had always been my passion, and there was a growing market for it that wasn't being well served locally. Plenty of shops could handle basic repairs, but few had the expertise or patience for complete classic car restorations or high-end customization work. The question was how to break in without significant capital or an established reputation of my own. I needed a showcase piece, something that would demonstrate my skills and vision in a way that would attract the right kind of clients. Uncle Jack's garage was small but honest. Just him, 2 other mechanics, and a part-time receptionist. The pay was crap compared to what I could make elsewhere, but it gave me time to plan my next move while keeping my hands busy. 3 months in, I got an unexpected opportunity. A client brought in a 1970 Dodge Charger that had been sitting in his barn for 30 years. It was in rough shape, but the bones were good. The guy had gotten a quote from another restoration shop for $65,000 and nearly had a heart attack. This Charger wasn't just any old muscle car. It was a genuine RT with the 426 Hemi engine option, one of fewer than 200 ever made. In proper restored condition, it could be worth north of $200,000. The owner, Bob Henderson, had inherited it from his uncle and had fond memories of riding in it as a kid, but he didn't have the knowledge or funds for a proper restoration. I can do it for $48,000, I told him after a thorough inspection, but I need half up front for parts and materials. He looked at me suspiciously. That's a lot less than the other quote. What corners are you cutting? None, I said honestly. I don't have the overhead they do, and I'll be doing most of the work myself instead of farming it out. He studied me for a minute, then nodded. Jack vouches for you, and that means something, but I want weekly progress updates and photos. The next day, $24,000 hit my account. I took $16,000 of it and rented a small warehouse space on the edge of town, bought some essential equipment, and got to work. I hired a semi-retired painter named Marcus, who had 40 years of experience but wanted flexible hours. Uncle Jack let me use his shop's lifts on Sundays when they were closed. That Charger became my obsession. I spent 14-hour days on it, 7 days a week. The engine rebuild alone took 6 weeks, finding original spec parts, machining components that weren't available anymore, meticulously documenting everything so it could be certified as a correct restoration. The body required original donor parts I sourced from junkyards across 3 states instead of cheap reproductions. Marcus worked magic recreating the original plum-crazy purple paint job that made these Chargers iconic. 6 months later, that Charger was a masterpiece. When we fired it up for the first time, the sound of that Hemi engine echoing through the warehouse was like music. Bob was so impressed he brought over 3 of his car collector buddies to see it. Within a month, I had 4 new restoration projects lined up. All high dollar, all with 50% deposits. I officially launched Precision Performance with that first Charger as my portfolio piece. I kept overhead low, working 80-hour weeks, sometimes sleeping at the shop. The strategy was risky. Restoration projects tied up cash flow for months, but the higher margins and chance to build a reputation for excellence were worth it. A year in, I had hired 3 full-time specialists. Marcus for paint, a guy named Diego, who was a wizard with wiring and electronics, and an upholstery expert named Tom, who could recreate any interior from scratch. Uncle Jack consulted on the complex engine builds, bringing 35 years of experience to the table. We were still operating out of that warehouse, which I'd gradually improved with better lighting, a small customer lounge, and a dedicated clean room for engine assembly. It wasn't fancy, but it was functional, and our clients seemed to appreciate the no-frills approach. They cared more about the quality of our work than whether we had Italian espresso in the waiting area. That's when I met Ryan Matthews, a 40-year-old tech entrepreneur with too much money and a passion for resto mods, classic cars with modern performance upgrades. He brought me a rusted-out 1965 Mustang Shell and said, "Make it look classic, but perform like a supercar." The budget, $175,000. This was a different kind of challenge. The Mustang would need a completely custom chassis, modern suspension, upgraded brakes, and a contemporary drivetrain that could deliver supercar performance while looking like it belonged in a 60s pony car. I spent weeks just on the design, creating detailed 3D models and performance simulations before cutting a single piece of metal. Ryan was involved throughout, refining the vision as we went. The build took 9 months from start to finish. We replaced the original 289 V8 with a modern Coyote 5.0, 0 crate engine pushing, 460 horsepower, added a 6-speed manual transmission, completely redesigned the suspension geometry, and installed Brembo brakes all around. The body remained largely stock in appearance, with subtle modifications to accommodate wider tires and improved cooling. The final product got featured in 3 automotive magazines and won Best Resto Mod at a major car show. Ryan was so impressed he became an unofficial brand ambassador, bringing in his wealthy friends, and eventually becoming a silent investor when I was ready to expand. By the end of year 2, Precision Performance had a 10-month waiting list, and I had to move to a proper 15,000 feet facility. I poached Tony, the head mechanic, from my dad's shop, offering him $20,000 more per year, plus profit sharing. Dad never found out it was me who hired him away. Tony brought with him a wealth of knowledge about Carter Auto's operations, their pricing structure, their vendor relationships, their customer pain points. I didn't use this info to directly compete with Dad's shop, but it helped me avoid making some of the same mistakes. I stayed focused on what I knew best, taking historic cars and making them exceptional, either through pure restoration or tasteful modernization. And I never ever launched a service I couldn't deliver perfectly. The turning point came when I met Sophia Reeves, a marketing consultant who specialized in luxury brands. She came to the shop with her brother, who was picking up his restored BMW 2002, and immediately started asking me questions about my business model. Sophia wasn't what I expected in a marketing person. She'd previously worked with high-end watchmakers, boutique hotels, and custom furniture designers' businesses that, like mine, were built on craftsmanship and attention to detail rather than volume. "You have something special here," she told me bluntly, "but nobody knows about it, except a handful of wealthy car guys. You're leaving money on the table." I was skeptical. I don't want to be just another shop, quality over quantity. She shook her head. "I'm not talking about quantity. I'm talking about perception and positioning. You're doing the work of a premium brand, but charging upper middle rates and marketing yourself like a local business." After some convincing, I hired her as a consultant. She transformed our image with a new logo, high-end website, and strategic media presence. Our waiting list grew to 14 months, and I raised rates by 30%. That's when Sophia introduced me to Daniel Kang, a former operations executive for a luxury car maker. "Your quality is impeccable, but your processes are killing your margins," he said after one tour. I brought him on as COO with equity instead of a huge salary. The best decision I ever made. He streamlined everything, cutting turnaround time by 25% without sacrificing craftsmanship. One of his first moves was to implement a proper inventory management system. We'd been ordering parts as needed, often paying premium prices for rushed shipping. Daniel set up forecasting models based on our project pipeline, allowing us to order in bulk and negotiate better terms with suppliers. He also reorganized our workflow, applying principles from high-end manufacturing to our restoration process. Instead of having each specialist work in isolation, he created teams that moved through projects together, reducing handoff delays and improving communication. The results were immediate, faster completions, fewer errors, and happier clients. With Sophia handling our image and Daniel running operations, I could focus on what I loved, the cars themselves, and training the next generation of restoration experts. We started an apprenticeship program, partnering with technical colleges to find talented kids who wanted to learn the craft the right way. I'd never seen myself as a teacher, but it turned out I had a knack for it. Nothing gave me more satisfaction than watching a 19-year-old kid who'd never held a wrench before transform into a skilled craftsman. By year 4, we had opened a second location in Arizona, focusing on rust-free classics from the Southwest. A year later, a third shop in Florida. Each one maintained the same standards, the same attention to detail, and the same commitment to doing things right. Meanwhile, through the grapevine, I heard things weren't going so well at Carter Auto. Dad had gone through with Evan's expansion plan, opening that second location in the expensive part of town. It lasted 9 months before they had to break the lease, losing over $120,000 in the process. Evan blamed market conditions. I knew better. They'd lost 3 more experienced mechanics after Tony left, replacing them with cheaper, less skilled labor. The quality of their work declined. The customer complaints increased. A former Carter customer who'd switched to us told me they'd had his Mercedes in for 3 weeks trying to fix an electrical issue. Another said they'd been quoted $3,200 for a timing belt replacement that should have cost half that. Uncle Jack kept me updated occasionally, though he'd mostly distanced himself from them too, after Dad disrespected him at that last meeting. They're still afloat, he told me during our monthly fishing trip, but they're taking on water fast. I just nodded and cast my line again. I had my own ship to steer. In my 5th year of operation, Precision Performance hit $8.2 million in annual revenue across all locations. We had a staff of 47 specialists, a YouTube channel with over 200,000 subscribers, Sophia's idea, and a reputation as one of the top restoration shops in the country. The real validation came when Classic Car Collector named us Restoration Shop of the Year after our historically accurate restoration of a rare 1956 Mercedes 300 SL. The article called our work museum quality, and me a mechanical artist rather than just a mechanic. That challenging 18-month project resulted in a car that Mercedes-Benz themselves acknowledged as one of the finest examples in existence. I framed that article, not out of ego, but as a reminder of what happens when you stay true to your standards. Ryan, my tech entrepreneur client, turned investor, introduced me to the concept of diversification. You've built an incredible business, but it's still dependent on your direct involvement. You need to think about what's next. He was right. As rewarding as the restoration work was, it had limitations. Projects took months to complete, required massive upfront investment, and could only be scaled so far without compromising quality. If I wanted to build something truly sustainable, I needed additional revenue streams. We diversified by launching a reproduction parts business for rare classics. Unlike the cheap approximations flooding the market, ours were indistinguishable from originals in materials and finish. What started as a side hustle quickly grew into a 7-figure business with orders from shops worldwide. Daniel also suggested creating digital records of our restorations, which became a subscription service for DIY restores and small shops. This searchable database of repairs and techniques became indispensable for shops taking on complex projects they wouldn't have attempted otherwise. Throughout all this growth and diversification, I maintained one core principle: never sacrifice quality. Every car that left our shop had to be perfect, or it didn't leave at all. No exceptions, no matter how important the client or how tight the deadline. That reputation became our greatest asset. When people brought their cherished classics to Precision Performance, they knew they were getting the absolute best from people who cared as much about their car as they did. All this success didn't go unnoticed. I started getting acquisition offers from larger automotive groups and investors. Some were tempting 8-figure sums that would have set me up for life, but I remembered what happened when my father chose money over craftsmanship. I wasn't going to make that mistake. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was reviewing designs for a custom carbon fiber dashboard we were developing for a Ferrari restoration when my assistant buzzed in. "There's Alyssa Carter on line 1, says she's your mother." 5 years of silence, and now she was calling out of the blue. I considered not taking it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Ronnie," she said, her voice strained. "How are you?" "I'm well. What can I do for you?" The small talk lasted about 30 awkward seconds before she got to the point. "Your father had a heart attack last week. He's stable, but he's going to need bypass surgery. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope he recovers quickly. There's more." She continued the business. "It's not doing well. Evan made some decisions that haven't worked out. Through industry contacts, I'd heard Carter Auto was on the verge of bankruptcy. They'd tried to expand too quickly, taken on too much debt, and cut too many corners on quality." What kind of decisions, I asked, though I already knew. "He took out loans to open 2 more locations. Neither is profitable yet. And there was an issue with some repair work on a customer's Porsche. They're suing us for $225,000, suing over a Porsche repair. That had to be a major screw-up. These weren't Toyota Corollas we were talking about. Porsche owners expect perfection, and they can afford good lawyers when they don't get it. And what exactly are you hoping I'll do about this?" There was a pause. "We need your help, Ronnie. The bank is threatening to call in our loans. We could lose everything, including the house," I asked, knowing how much that would hurt my father's pride. "Yes," she whispered. "Everything." I told her I'd think about it, and hung up. 20 minutes later, Evan called. Unlike Mum, he didn't bother with pleasantries. "Look, I know we're not on the best terms, but this is about family," he started. "Is it?" I replied coldly, because I remember being told I wasn't really part of the decision-making family 5 years ago. He had the audacity to sigh like I was being difficult. Dad was wrong to say that. We all know it. But right now we need your help. You've built this amazing business and we're really struggling. What exactly do you want from me, Evan? We need a loan just to get us through the next few months until we can sell the newer locations. How much? $300,000. I actually laughed. You want me to loan you $300,000 after everything that happened? It would be a legitimate business loan, he insisted, with interest and everything. And we'd put up the original shop location as collateral. The shop that's about to be foreclosed on by the bank. That collateral. He didn't have an answer for that. I'll come by tomorrow, I said finally. And before I made any offer, I had my lawyer look into that Porsche lawsuit. It was real and ugly. Turned out they'd attempted to rebuild the PDK transmission in a 911 GT3 something that should have been sent back to Porsche directly. They botched it so badly they caused $180,000 in engine and drivetrain damage. My lawyer advised that any settlement under $250,000 would be a win. We built it into my eventual deal. Any settlement under $250,000 I'd cover. Anything above that, they'd share liability. Risk management, 101. After hanging up, I called Uncle Jack. They finally swallowed their pride, huh? He said when I told him. Seems like it. How bad is it really over there? Jack sighed. Worse than they're letting on. Evan's been cooking the books to hide the losses from your dad. They've got tax liens, unhappy customers, and 3 mechanics threatening to sue for unpaid wages. Jesus, what are you going to do? I thought about it for a long moment. I'm going to help them, I said finally, but on my terms. Uncle Jack wasn't surprised. I knew me well enough to know I wouldn't let the business my grandfather started go under completely, even if my father and brother had run it into the ground. That night I stayed up late running numbers. By dawn I had a plan. The next day I walked into Carter Auto for the first time in 5 years. The place looked smaller somehow and considerably shabier. What shocked me most was the condition of the shop floor itself. Tools were scattered everywhere, not put away properly. Oil stains covered the concrete. 2 of the lifts had out-of-order signs taped to them. The pride my father once took in maintaining a clean professional workspace was nowhere to be seen. Dad was there looking older and frailer than I remembered. His face was grey, and he moved slowly, clearly still recovering from his heart attack. But his eyes still had that stubborn pride when he saw me. Evan appeared from the back office wearing an ill-fitting suit, like he was playing dress-up as a businessman. Ronnie, thanks for coming. Let's talk in the office. For 2 hours, I went through their books, asking pointed questions that made Evan squirm. The situation was exactly as bad as Uncle Jack had described, maybe worse. They were about $420,000 in debt, not the $300,000 Evan had claimed. They hadn't paid their parts suppliers in 90 days. The bank was threatening to seize their equipment. Their customer retention rate had fallen to 42%, meaning less than half their customers ever came back after a first visit. Their online reviews were abysmal. 2.1 stars on Google with comments like, overpriced and underseller, and took my car in for an oil change, left with more problems than I came with. So that's it, Evan said when I closed the ledger. Can you help us? Yes, I said finally. I can help you, but not with a loan. Evan's eyebrows shot up. What then? I'll buy the business. The words hung in the air like smoke. Buy it. Dad finally spoke up, like the words personally offended him. This is a family business. It's a failing business, I said flatly. One that'll be gone in 60 days if someone doesn't stop the bleeding. I'm offering a lifeline. You can take it or let the bank liquidate everything. He scoffed. You think you're the savior now? That just because you built your little hobby shop, that hobby shop made $8 million last year. I cut in. And it's about to make a hell of a lot more. Dad stood up, trying to look authoritative, even though he barely filled out his old shop jacket anymore. This place has my name on it. I looked him in the eye. It won't for long. He opened his mouth to say something else, but nothing came out. Evan broke the silence. Dad, he's right. We don't have a choice. That's when I laid out the deal. I'll assume the $420,000 in debt plus $100,000 in cash. You both stay on salary for 1 year as consultants while we transition. After that, you're out. That's insulting, Dad snapped. No, I said what you did to this business is insulting. I'm just cleaning it up. Can we have some time to think about it? You have 48 hours, I said, standing up. After that, I'll be too busy cleaning up a mess of my own making rather than someone else's. I left them sitting there speechless. 2 days later, my lawyer got a call. They accepted my offer. The transition was smoother than expected. I merged Carter Auto into Precision Performance, keeping the original location, but upgrading everything from the equipment to the coffee machine. I retained most of the staff, giving them proper training and better wages. We closed for 2 weeks to renovate and run the staff through intensive training. Dad consulted for just 3 months before his health wouldn't allow him to continue. Evan stuck it out the full year, watching sullenly as the business flourished. The shop went from losing $30,000 monthly to breaking even by month 4 and turning profitable by month 6. It took 70-hour weeks, rebuilt supplier relationships, and a new tiered service model that Carter Auto had never considered. The real satisfaction came during the grand reopening. We'd renovated the entire facility, and I invited all the old customers back for an open house. Many of them remembered me from before and were effusive in their praise of how the place had transformed. "You've really saved this shop," one long-time customer told me right in front of Dad and Evan. It was going downhill fast these last few years. I'd actually started taking my BMW elsewhere. Dad's face tightened, but he said nothing. Later that night, after everyone had left, Evan approached me in the new customer lounge. He looked defeated. "I really thought I could do it," he said quietly. "Run the business like Dad." I poured him a coffee from our new espresso machine. The problem was trying to be like Dad at all. He built this place through hard work, but he stopped evolving. You can't just keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Evan nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry for how things went down before." "I know," I said. And I did. Evan was never the enemy. He was just the favored son who never had to face consequences until now. A few weeks later, I offered him a position in sales at our main location, not out of charity, but because I genuinely thought he might excel there if given the right structure and support. To my surprise, he accepted, and even more surprisingly, he thrived in the role. Turned out, Evan was excellent at building relationships with high-end clients when he had a quality product to sell and wasn't responsible for the operational side. Dad was the last holdout. The ultimate vindication came a year later when Classic Car Collector featured us in their family business's issue. They interviewed both of us about the successful merger. Dad, to his credit, told the truth. "Ronnie saw what I couldn't. That craftsmanship matters more than expansion. He built precision performance from nothing because he believed in doing things the right way, not the fast way." Taking over Carter Auto wasn't revenge. It was redemption. Progress comes in small steps. When I look back at that day 5 years ago, when Dad said those words, "We need businessmen, not grease monkeys," I realize it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to build something on my own terms. The lesson I learned wasn't about cars or business. It was about having the courage to walk away from something that doesn't value you and the determination to build something better.